saying what at 6:40?
No, really? 20 minutes? Surely I don't get 20 minutes, but here we go. I'm Ken Bennett. I'm running for governor. I'm a lifetime Arizonan. I was born here in the Tucson area when my folks
Sorry,
were doing...
Ken, 6:33.
6:33. Yeah. Now it's 13. Okay. I was born here in Tucson when my folks were going to the University of Arizona. I remember my first memory is of winter of '62. It snowed in Tucson. And I was standing in the back seat of Dad's '55 Chevy. Couldn't figure out what all that white stuff was outside. And that's my earliest memory. Unfortunately, we moved back to Prescott, which was my mother's family's hometown. Grandma and Grandpa, their phone number in Prescott was 49.
Wow.
So our family had been in the Prescott area for a long time. We moved back to Prescott. That's where my wife and I reside. Been married 36 years to the same woman. We have 3 grown children and 4 grandchildren. I'm a businessman. I've spent 30 plus years, 25 running a family business up in the Prescott area. It's no Raytheon, but it employs about 60 people. So we touch 60 families. This is our 80th year in business. Grandma and Grandpa started the company in 1938. So we're very proud and humbled by the opportunity to make a difference in our small part of northern Arizona. I'm running for governor because the truth matters. And I don't say that lightly, but in some very critical areas, we're not being told the truth. We've been told, for example, that for the last 4 years, we've had balanced budgets with no tax increases and no accounting tricks and gimmicks. And yet, the total state debt today is about $1 billion higher than it was 4 years ago. Now, if your debts are growing, do you have a balanced budget? No. And so we were told that the budget that was just passed did not include any tax increases. And yet they increased the vehicle license tax by almost $170 million. Most of that is being used to pay for the Department of Public Safety, but tens of millions, if not 20s of millions of dollars, it was raised higher than needed so that some money could be siphoned off for the teacher salaries. I think the governor told us correctly for the first 3.5 months earlier of this year that there's no way that the state can afford a 20% across the board increase for teacher salaries. And yet, in a matter of 2 days in the middle of April, he went from saying that there's no way we can afford it to we're going to do $1 billion of increases over the next 2 or 3 years. I think that was, with all due respect, done for political purposes, and I think he caved in and panicked because of the political pressure at the time. I believe that it's going to put the state budget right back into very serious structural deficits. I have very serious concerns about that because, and by the way, I want to recognize Luann Preble, who served in the legislature with me many years ago, but I served in the state senate for 8 years. And the last 4 of those 8 years, I was president of the Arizona Senate. And I got to be president of the Arizona Senate during 4 years that we had a governor named Janet Napolitano. And I had to fight every year to make sure that she did not spend every dime that she could find somewhere in the state budget. In 2005 and 6, when the economy got healthy and more money would come in than we had budgeted for, she wanted to spend every dime that came in. And I said, no, we're going to live within the budget that we set, and we're going to save those excess revenues in the states. We call it the Rainy Day Fund. When I became president of the Senate, the Rainy Day Fund, or our savings account, had $13 million in it. And our budget was approaching $8 billion. 4 years later, with a Democrat governor who wanted to spend every dime she could find anywhere, 4 years later, under my leadership as president of the Senate, the Rainy Day Fund stood at $1.1 billion. Wow. Now that was the Rainy Day Fund and our ending cash balances. During those 4 years, we did the largest tax cut in the history of the state of Arizona. We also put the most new money during those 4 years into education in the state of Arizona than any other 4 years in the history of the state. We eliminated hundreds of millions of dollars of accounting tricks and gimmicks, and we balanced the budget 4 years in a row. I was term limited from office. We have term limits in Arizona, 8 years. And I watched in horror, in the very year after I left, I was replaced by some other Republicans that were not nearly as concerned about maintaining sound financial management in the state, and voted with Governor Napolitano to increase spending the very next year after I left by $1 billion a year.
Wow.
When I left, the budget was balanced at $9.5 billion coming in, $9.5 billion coming out, $1.1 billion in the state's rainy day fund. And when she increased the spending by $1 billion and the recession hit in 2008, the rainy day fund was wiped out in a matter of about 16 months, and it plunged the state into the largest financial crisis we've ever had. And I watched that horror movie starring Janet Napolitano 10 or 11 years ago. And now I think we may have just done the same thing under a Republican governor. And I think we can do better than that. We were told 2 years ago that if we would pass Prop 123 to take more money out of the state land trust, that Prop 123 would put $350 million of additional money into the K-12 school system. It's actually proven to be about half of that. We were told that most of the money created by Prop 123 would go to teachers. If the money that did come in from Prop 123 had been given to teachers, we'd have had enough money to give a 6% raise each of the last 3 years. If we had even $175 million, if we had half, and we gave it to teacher salary increases, we'd have had 3 years of 6% increases. What did we have? 1.5, 1.4, and about 1.5. So the money didn't get to teachers. We were told that if we passed Prop 123, we wouldn't take any of the money out of the principal of the state land trust. You know, if you know about trust, you don't spend the principal out of a trust fund. And yet in the very first year after Prop 123 passed, $170 million of money was taken out of the principal of the trust fund. That $170 million not being there forever to earn interest for the school districts will cost the schools of Arizona $120 million every 10 years forever, because we took $170 million out of the principal of the trust fund. I want to thank people for helping get my name on the ballot. When I saw the total reversal of the governor, and you know, he told us last year, by the way, that any new money going to K-12 education should be based on merit or performance, not just across the board for everybody, whether you're doing a good job or not. And yet this 20% raise, which they really haven't done 20, they did 10, they're hoping to do 5 and 5. But there was just a tweet that came out of the Arizona Republic today that there are signs that there will not be enough money to finish that plan. The rest of state government is going to be on bread and water for the next 3 to 5 years because we have overcommitted monies. We're back to playing accounting tricks and gimmicks. I told you that they raised the vehicle license tax and are sweeping money over to pay for teacher salaries. They raised health care expenses in Arizona. They raised the hospital assessment and some other things called the provider rate. We raised health care by $55 million on Arizonans so that we could free up $25 million of some state money to go to pay for the teacher salaries. When I filed my paperwork, my petitions to get my name on the ballot, I was driving down from Prescott and I started hearing these articles on the radio that it had been worked out between the McCains and Governor Ducey that when John McCain could no longer serve as our U.S. Senator, he was prepared to appoint Cindy McCain to replace him. The day after we filed our paperwork, we tweeted out that if I'm governor of Arizona, I promise that I will not appoint Cindy McCain to replace John McCain as our U.S. Senator. Why did I do that? I did that because of his vote on repealing Obamacare.
Yep.
In October of 2016, I still have some of the campaign literature at home, Senator McCain campaigned on leading the fight to repeal Obamacare. That was October of 2016. A year and a month later, in December of 2017, he went on the floor and did the vote, the thumbs down. As he left the floor and was asked, why'd you do that? He said, because the governor of my state asked me to. We have Obamacare. There's several pages probably around showing tweets from both McCain's office and Ducey's office saying that that in fact is exactly why we had the thumbs down vote. In addition to that, with all due respect, I don't believe that our U.S. Senate seats are family heirlooms that should be passed around a family.
That is not what our founders.
That's right. Now, yesterday and today, I just released our school safety plan. The governor had one that he could not get through the legislature because it involved taking away guns from Arizonans. My school safety plan does not involve taking away guns from law-abiding Arizonans. Instead, it puts guns where they are necessary in order to protect our students. The best way to deal with a bad person with a gun is to have some good people with guns at the same place at the same time.
Exactly.
And so one of the first things that I will do as governor is create a task force that will focus on student safety, both in man-made and natural emergencies, but with a focus on the worst case scenario, a shooter in a school. But when a shooter in a school has started shooting, worrying about whether they're mentally ill or whatever it is, it's over. It's time to stop that shooter.
Absolutely.
The average response time for emergency personnel in those situations is about 18 minutes. The average shooting takes 12 and a half. I just heard a statistic that somebody is being shot every 8 seconds when those shootings begin. So we're going to focus not on taking guns away, we're going to focus on, I recommend that we use as a starting point for this commission that's going to look, a program out of Ohio that's called the FASTER program. Faculty, Administration, Safety Training, and Emergency Response. The FASTER program trains willing, we're not going to force somebody to do something that they're not willing to do. It trains willing, competent, and capable individuals to be able to respond in an armed crisis, understand crisis management in a school situation, be better trained on emergency medical aid, and fourth, if they desire, carrying firearms in our schools. We won't make anybody do anything against their will. I actually believe that we could use and should use some tax credits to reward people who are willing to and are able, if they're past law enforcement or past military or have significant individual firearms training and are willing to carry concealed firearms in a school situation. The principal of the high school that my children attended in Prescott told me just the other day that unbeknownst to just about anybody, when he was principal at his school, he had 5 or 6 people carrying at any given time.
Wow.
And so we're going to focus, with all due respect, I think the governor's stop plan focuses too much on taking guns away. I'm going to focus on protecting students.
All right.
I know that I'm challenging the establishment, but I believe that, with all due respect, the swamp in Arizona needs cleaned up as much as the swamp in DC. And I think too many of our public policy decisions are being made by incentives and motivations that you were kind of touching on, Alex. NAFTA, all kinds of things related to fair trade. The Obamacare money, I think that the whole asking Senator McCain to vote against the repeal of Obamacare is because we now rely on $15 billion a year of federal money to come into the state. We are now reliant on federal money and we don't want to give it up. And so we're making decisions that are not in the best interest of Arizonans. I think Obamacare is going to bankrupt our country and is killing jobs and hurting small businesses. And so I'm going to give people a choice. I appreciate people who helped collect signatures. When I announced that I was running, I went to 2 companies to help collect my signatures. I had a lot of volunteers, but one company up in Phoenix area was going to collect 1,000 signatures for me. Another one in Phoenix and Tucson was going to collect about 3,000. About 2 days after they started, the first guy got a visit in person from 2 attorneys from the governor's campaign. reminding him that he had collected signatures for the governor earlier in the year. He said, okay, that's fine, but you told me you had enough and told me to stop. Then they said, well, we never officially ended the contract, so we now demand that you quit collecting signatures for Bennett, or we're gonna sue your company. So he stopped. The other person had not worked for the governor, collecting signatures. She got a visit and was offered several thousands of dollars if she would just, I think it's a bribe, with all due respect, it's just several thousands of dollars if she would just stop collecting for Ken Bennett.
Wow.
She said, no, I like Ken Bennett, I want to see his name on the ballot, so she continued. A week later, she got another call offering that, I think I was paying $3 a signature. They offered to pay $6 a signature if she'd start collecting for the governor, even though he didn't need any more signatures. She again said, no, I'm gonna help Ken Bennett get his name on the ballot. And we were able to file almost 8,000 signatures 2 Wednesdays ago to get our name on the ballot. Many of those came from Pima County. I thank you for that. And we maybe have a minute or two for a question.
Yeah, you can have a couple questions.
Okay? Any questions?
Can we get that lady as governor?
It won't sell out, yeah.
You mentioned this tax that's, or the license fee that's.
Vehicle license tax that was increased.
Jan Brewer did that healthcare.
She did the Medicaid expansion tax, yes.
Right. Well, there seems to be now a potential issue, and I think they've been suing him on that one,
Mhm.
because it's a roundabout way of raising taxes without